Let's get to Ned Ryun, who is the president and founder of American Majority, but he's also got a cool book out that is hit top 100 in Amazon. Thanks for being with us. I'm going to get to your organization, Ned, in a minute, but I want to start with the new book which has come out, Restoring Our Republic. You got into the, and I don't do a lot of book, people on my show, a lot of people do that, I don't, but you got into the top 100 among all books on Amazon last week. You're number one in political philosophy. That's really tough to do. Tell us a little bit about your book and why it's so hot.
I think one of the reasons, John, that it's hot is I think it's giving people some real perspective on what's going on right now in D.C. And I say in the first chapter, really what we're experiencing today, the seeds of it were sown 100 years ago when progressives dropped an administrative state inside of our constitutional republic. And so I set the tone and really show, the founders of our republic were optimistic realists. They were very realistic about human nature. They knew that human nature was imperfect, should never be trusted with consolidated power. But they were optimistic they could create a government that would be a good steward of our rights but take none of them away. And then progressives come along, turn of the 20th century, and their utopian status, and they were completely naive about human nature. They believed that you should consolidate power inside of, the hands of a relatively few people to advance human progress. And so you start to see these very dramatic and different approaches to governing. And the thing that progressives have done over the last 100 years is they have consolidated power. They've broken down the machinery of the republic. And if you look at what has happened over the last 3 years, especially in D.C., Donald Trump shows up because I'm the duly elected president of the United States by the will of the people, by the means laid out by the Constitution. I'm the one who decides what my policy will be inside of the executive branch. And these administrative state actors said, we don't think so. We think we're the ones that decide. And I've made this point, John. You can draw a direct line from Woodrow Wilson to Lieutenant Colonel Vindman in which you see that they think it's these unelected bureaucrats that should have the power to decide policy. That's not how it works inside of our constitutional republic.
What is the objective? What do you want to drive people to understand that?
So my hope is this. First of all, we haven't been teaching this, John. We have not been teaching real history, intentionally so, again, because it does not line up with the progressive narrative, how they want us to view our history. I want people to understand who our founders were. I want them to understand the inspirations, where they got all of their ideas, how they constructed the machinery of the republic, how we've drifted from it, how we get back to it. And so it really lays out just the founding, how all these debates, how they put all of these pieces in place. The other thing, too, John, in Chapter 9 of this book, I talk about the Bill of Rights. And I talk about the debate between George Mason and Alexander Hamilton and James Madison in this debate. Should we actually have an enumerated Bill of Rights? And, of course, Mason and the Anti-Federalists were like, we have to have a stated Bill of Rights. Hamilton and Madison argue back, it's the machinery of the republic, this diffusion of power, it's the construction, the internal construction of a republic that will actually be the best protector of our rights. And you think about where we are today, John, when you see, and I'm thinking about the Roger Stone case right now, where somebody has been egregiously abused by the legal system, where people have used the law as a political weapon against a political opponent. This is what happens. When you consolidate power, you can have the greatest Bill of Rights. But when the machinery of the republic has been broken down, people can decide they're going to suspend the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and trample anyone's civil liberties, anybody's Fourth Amendment rights, on a whim to achieve their political ends. This is why people need to read this book to understand, here's where we came from, how far we've come. We better start thinking about how we get back to how a republic actually functions, or do we concede to the administrative state, which again leads us down a path of statism and socialism and eventually coercive socialism. So we've got to make a decision as a people, and this is why I wrote the book, so people can understand what we're fighting for.
So how does that tie into the Bernie Sanders phenomenon, Ned?
Boy, I mean, this is, again, the ignorance that you're seeing among the younger generations, especially about the dangers and the threat of socialism. Again, not a surprise when you think about the decades of how our indoctrination centers, and I say that with only slight sarcasm, our colleges and universities have not taught the truth about socialism. And we're not dealing with a socialist, we're dealing with a communist sympathizer. I've said this on TV. Bernie Sanders is very honest about what he thinks is the right approach to governing. And coercive socialism, there's another term for it, it's called communism. Part of the reason that we see Bernie Sanders surging It's because people haven't been taught the truth about socialism.
Or he just goes around and says Medicare for all, and people's parents are on Medicare, and they figure, well, that's not so bad. But, of course, it's not really Medicare for all.
No, it's not. I mean, this is part of the branding that the left has done very well. Medicare for all. Oh, how great is that? No, that's socialist health care. Universal basic income, all a Green New Deal. But another term for that is called coercive socialism. The only way you could actually get the Green New Deal, which, again, is pursuit of a solution for a hoax to actually be implemented, is to coerce people to accept it. I mean, they've done a very good job in branding. You pull away the terms, you pull away the branding, pure socialism. That's all it is.
Well, I mean, what Bernie has done with Medicare for all, and if you look at his speeches now, and by the way, there was just an article out in Ryun. He's fighting with AOC because he doesn't want to go over the crazy car now, okay? Because he thinks he's going to be the nominee. But the way he sells Medicare for all is like, your parents are on it, your grandparents are on it,
right.
They like it, that's fine. Here's what they don't mention. Number one, 80% of people that are on Medicare buy the supplemental insurance. 80%. Right. So you only got 20 people that don't have the supplemental, 20% of people don't have the supplemental insurance. Second of all, those that are on Medicare, it's not a single-payer system, right? So they're opting in because of their age. They're buying a supplemental. What Bernie is advocating now is a single-payer system where the government runs the entire healthcare industry. I mean, that's not what they're saying. They're saying Medicare for all sounds great, and grandma's on it, and that's fine. Can't be that bad. But it's not the Bernie system. Bernie is a single-payer system where insurance is illegal.
That's right. No, I mean, and I want to remind people, go look at what's going on in Canada. Look what's happening with the British NHS. Just because there is some healthcare system doesn't mean you're actually getting care. You look at some of the wait times for care in Canada.
Right.
And the thing that concerns me, again, you look at government. Government's a necessary evil. And I think the danger that we have seen in progressive thinking and socialist thinking is it is actually a force for good. It is not. It's a necessary evil because we're no angels. But you look at how government is wildly dysfunctional. It cannot implement. It cannot. The only way that we can actually get to real healthcare reform where people are actually, not with a card, because again, I remind people, just because you have coverage doesn't mean you're actually getting care, doesn't mean that there's actually benefit, you're getting health benefits and actually trending in the right direction to longer life, to better, solutions to cancer. All of these things, government by its very definition is wildly dysfunctional and inefficient, and yet their response to all of this is, let's do single-payer, Medicare for all. And I would remind people, if you want to see something really egregious, go look back at all of the basically overpayments in Medicare and Medicaid that have taken place over the last few years. We're not talking a few dollars here and there. We're talking tens of millions of dollars into the billions of dollars because people have mishandled money. And I'm thinking, people, read up on the facts, start to understand what they're saying. But this has always been the goal, John. They want to go towards single healthcare payer in the healthcare system. They want more government control on all facets of life. And this is the one thing. I think, though, this is refreshing in some ways, John, because I think now we can actually have real clarity and a real debate between a true socialist and a true free market capitalist in Donald Trump. So this is my hope, that we will get to have this conversation and drop the masquerade, Democrats, embrace who you are. Let's have this debate.
Well, that's why I think Bernie's going to be the nominee, and that debate is coming because Bernie embraces the title, doesn't run away from it. He's on it. That's why he completely crowded out Lady Macbeth Warren, who's a liar and tries to hide it and tries to give you numbers that don't make any sense. He just says, look, I'm going to take the healthcare industry over. I'm a socialist. It's a single-payer system. It's Medicare for all. Everybody gets it. Everybody get care. Well, what about taxes? Well, everybody's taxes are going to go up, but it's not going to. You're not going to pay what you're paying now if you add up all your health deductible and everything else. So
there's no way that any of these ideas can be paid for, John. I also did some of the math when you put together all of the crazy plans. It was about 200 and some trillion over 10 years.
Right.
There's no way on earth you could ever tax the American people enough, even in probably 100% tax rate, to actually fund all of their crazy ideas. The thing I think that's interesting thing about Sanders and this whole Democrat primary, though, think about this. Democrat establishment is terrified that somehow they're going to have a full-blown socialist as their banner bearer going into the general election in the fall. I think there's going to be a very interesting convention dynamic. I think Bernie's going to go in with probably less than 50% of the delegates. The thing that people need to remember is this. The superdelegates can't vote on the first ballot, but guess what? They can vote on the second ballot. I think the Democrat Party is going to do everything they can to keep Bernie below 50% of the delegates going into the convention to force it to a second ballot. And then you got a crazy dynamic. Does he run third party? Does he get shut out? What do his Bernie bros do? I think there's a lot of problems for the Democrat Party, and they have sown these seeds, and I couldn't be happier.
As Sheriff Clark said on my radio show the other day, former sheriff of Milwaukee County, he said if Bernie gets there in the lead but under 50%, he said, bring the fire trucks.
Yeah, no, I think...
He said, bring the fire trucks and be sure you got plenty of hydrants because the fire's coming. And I think there's a little, unfortunately, that might not be far from the truth. We're with Ned Ryun. He's the founder and chief executive officer of American Majority. We're going to be talking about that in a minute. And he has a new book out, Restoring Our Republic, went in the top 100 among all books on Amazon last week. And it's numero uno in political philosophy. So give it a shot. Go to Amazon and buy his book, Restoring Our Republic. And you're going to be glad you did. Ned, I want to get a couple more minutes. American Majority, I love what you guys are doing, certainly during the campaign. Tell me what your priorities are now in the coming several months before the election.
So really quick, just to overview, we started 12 years ago with the idea of identifying and training people to run for state and local office. I'm a big believer real change begins at the local level. National generational change. If you can rise from the local level all the way to the national, look what progressives did, you can have massive generational change. So we train people to run for office. Politics is policy. You got to win politically so you can implement policy. We train activists as well. How do you get out the vote? How can you be better at building coalitions? How can you be better at social media? So we do a lot of that through our C3. With our C4, what we do, John, is we then identify and train people. How can you be better at doing all of these things? And oh, by the way, you can now do issue advocacy, you can do direct advocacy through the C4. And so what we're doing is we're focusing on Virginia, we're focusing on Minnesota, and we're focusing on Wisconsin with our C4 work. And really interesting, John, our focus through the C4 is this. We want to go identify as many white males with high school-only education to get them out to vote. And I'll tell you an interesting statistic why we're doing that. In Wisconsin alone, there are over 450,000 that fit that demographic that did not vote in 2016. Guess how much Trump won that demographic by in 2016? About 40 points. And so our goal is to say to these people, you got to get out and vote. You got to go to the polls. You got to vote for Trump in 2020 if you want to continue to see these great trends in our economy, in jobs, in wages. You're the type of people that need to be out there voting for Donald Trump. So we educate and then we advocate through the C3 and the C4, John.
Nick, what would that look like in Virginia?
So what we're doing in Virginia is we're going to be looking, what we do is we put together Liberty headquarters, we put together spots where people can come together. I've got field staff who are going to be organizing. We did some of this, you know this, we did some of this last fall. Yep. Again, wow, Bloomberg and Soros dropping in a ton of money. I would quibble over what RNC did and spending some of their money. So we identify and train people, and then we get them out on the streets. We get them knocking on doors. We get them having face-to-face conversations. Again, the most effective way to actually get somebody out to vote for your candidate is to go knock on their door, have a conversation. So we do targeted doors and we do targeted phones, and we try to get people to have a conversation. And then once we've had that conversation, get them to commit. I'm going to go out and I'm going to vote in November.
Well, we need to get together because the only way we get Virginia competitive is by registering voters that that just what you said, just registering voters. And the Democrats are doing it. They have a machine in Northern Virginia, in Hampton Roads, in Richmond. I mean, I always tell the story. During the last cycle, the 2019 cycle, I went for a cup of coffee at a Dunkin' Donuts in Great Bridge, Chesapeake, which votes Republican, 75-25, right? Something in there,
right.
Like 70-30. There's a Democratic operative in there with a clipboard registering voters at the Dunkin' Donuts. And I said to myself, if they have enough resources to go to my hometown in Great Bridge in the morning, outside, across the street from, Tidewater Community College. If they've got resources to go there, God knows what they're doing in Northern Virginia. They got 50 people out registering voters. We got like one.
This is the thing I will tell people listening. The Democrats are extremely sophisticated on voter registration because they know one thing, that people who are newly registered, sometimes upwards 80% of them will vote in the very next election. And so they're very good about a year and a half out from the very next election doing voter registration drives, tracking those people, getting them on a sheet, getting them, being able to call them because they realize you get them registered, a lot of these people will turn up and vote in the very next election. So, no, I totally agree. We're doing voter registration trainings as well in those 3 targeted states, Virginia being one of them, because we have to increase the base. You have to identify these people, and then you've got to get them to the polls to get them to vote. I mean, it really is. We always say this, John, but this is probably one of the most momentous, critical elections 2020 is in deciding which direction we're going to go. Are we going to go down and continue down, slump down this path of socialism, or we're going to say enough's enough? We're going to continue down this path, this economic revival. We're going to make America great again. So 2020 is just a massive critical election. So we're going to be doing our work, and hopefully more and more people are going to be joining us in it.
All right. Well, we need to get together, and because we need the help here in Virginia, kind of up the effort, and so we can be a lot more competitive. Ned, I love what you guys are doing. I'm out of time. Ned Ryun, founder, CEO, American Majority, Inc., and buy his book, Restoring Our Republic, went into the top 100 among all books on Amazon. This is all books in the world, top 100 and number 1 in political philosophy. So give it a shot. You can get on Amazon, Restoring Our Republic. Ned, thanks for being with us, man.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.